The council chamber was silent when the choice was announced. A single human would guard the alien cubs. Every alien in the room turned in shock, their eyes wide, their voices rising with disbelief. "Impossible," hissed a scaled elder, his tail slamming the stone floor. "A human cannot survive in the deep jungle." Others muttered in agreement, their feathers ruffling, their antennae twitching with nervous energy. The deep jungle was no place for the weak. It was filled with predators that even seasoned alien hunters feared. Beasts with fangs longer than blades, shadows that moved like whispers, and venomous creatures that could kill with a single sting. And yet the council had spoken. The cubs, the future of the tribe, would be placed under the watch of one human. The human did not speak. He stood tall at the center of the chamber, his dark eyes calm, his face unreadable. His name was Daniel Reeves, a soldier from Earth. He bowed his head once and accepted the task without hesitation. The aliens whispered among themselves. Some laughed quietly, convinced that the cubs would not survive the first night. Others waited in silence, uneasy, wondering why the council had chosen such a strange guardian. When the meeting ended, Daniel was led to the den where the cubs slept. The den was carved into the roots of a massive jungle tree, thick vines twisting around its base. The cubs were small, with soft fur and curious eyes that blinked at the stranger standing before them. They growled faintly, confused by his scent, but Daniel simply sat down on the ground, watching them with quiet patience. Night fell. The jungle came alive with strange sounds, howls, screeches, and the heavy footsteps of creatures moving in the dark. The air grew thick with tension. Glowing eyes appeared among the trees, watching the den with hunger. The cubs whimpered, curling closer together. Daniel moved slowly, reaching for the pack at his side. He pulled out a small metal rod and pressed a switch. A faint hum filled the air as an energy barrier shimmered faintly around the entrance, but he knew it would not hold forever. He crouched low, his senses sharp, listening to the jungle. Every crack of a twig, every breath of wind, every growl in the distance. He was calm, almost unnaturally calm, as if he had been here before. The first predator revealed itself. It was massive, taller than 3 men, with scales that glistened under the moonlight and claws sharp enough to cut stone. Its yellow eyes glowed, fixed on the cubs. Drool dripped from its mouth as it stalked forward. The cubs cried out in fear, pressing against the back wall of the den. The alien scouts watching from afar whispered in panic. "He will die," one muttered. "No human can face that beast." But Daniel did not move away. Instead, he stepped forward, past the barrier, placing himself between the monster and the cubs. The beast roared, the sound shaking the leaves from the trees. Birds scattered into the night sky. Smaller creatures ran from the noise. The jungle itself seemed to hold its breath. Daniel did not roar back. He did not bare his teeth or raise his weapon wildly. Instead, he studied the beast, watching the way it shifted its weight, the rhythm of its breathing, the twitch of its tail. When the monster lunged, Daniel moved. It was not strength that saved him, but speed and precision. He rolled to the side, his blade flashing in the moonlight. The edge cut across the beast's flank, not deep enough to kill, but sharp enough to make it scream. The cubs stared with wide eyes, the sound of their guardian's weapon echoing in their ears. The beast turned, furious, swiping its claws across the ground. Sparks flew as they struck stone. Daniel darted back, always staying just ahead of the strike. He was not fighting with brute power. He was studying, learning, finding the pattern. Then he struck again, this time at its leg. The blade bit deep. The beast staggered, roaring with rage. The alien scouts could hardly believe it. "He is winning?" one whispered. Daniel pressed the attack. His movements were sharp and efficient, each strike aimed at the beast's weak points. He was calm, steady, like a man fighting an enemy he already understood. At last, the predator hesitated. Its glowing eyes flickered with something new, something no alien had ever seen before in such a creature. Fear. The beast growled once more, but instead of lunging, it backed away into the shadows. Its massive body disappeared among the trees, leaving only silence. Daniel lowered his weapon, breathing steadily. He turned back to the den, where the cubs were still huddled together. Their eyes shone with awe, not fear, as they looked at him. For the first time, the cubs made a small sound, a soft chirp of trust, as they crept closer to him. One brushed its head against his hand. Daniel said nothing. He simply sat down again, resting his weapon across his knees. The scouts watching in silence knew the truth. The jungle had just witnessed something impossible. A human had stood against its predators and survived. By dawn, the whispers had already begun spreading through the villages. The cubs had lived, the predators had fled, and the name of the human guardian was no longer spoken with doubt, but with something else, with fear and respect. The jungle never forgave weakness. When dawn broke, the cubs peeked out of the den, their eyes wide with curiosity. The alien scouts kept their distance, whispering about the human who had survived the night. Some still refused to believe it. He was lucky, they hissed. The beast will return with more. Daniel said nothing. He only checked his blade, cleaned it carefully, and scanned the forest with sharp eyes. He knew the jungle better than the aliens thought. He had seen the way the shadows moved, the way the air grew still before a predator's strike. He had survived war on Earth, and to him, this was just another battlefield. But the jungle was watching, waiting. By evening, the cubs began to whimper. Their ears twitched at sounds Daniel had already noticed hours before, branches snapping, the distant cry of hunting packs, and the low rumble of something much larger. The predators were gathering. The first wave came with silence. Dozens of smaller beasts with black fur and glowing red eyes crawled through the undergrowth. Their bodies were lean, their movements fast. They crept like shadows, their claws leaving trails in the dirt. They circled the den, testing the ground, their snarls low and sharp. The cubs cried out, pressing against Daniel. Daniel rose to his feet, calm. His blade was steady in his hand, but this time he pulled something else from his pack, a round metal device with blinking lights. He pressed it to the ground at the entrance of the den. A soft hum spread through the dirt. The air shimmered faintly. The smaller beasts hissed in confusion, their claws scraping against the invisible barrier. They struck hard, faster than arrows. One hit the barrier and was thrown back with a burst of blue sparks. But more came, dozens, hundreds. The ground shook with their weight. The cubs squealed, trembling. Daniel waited, his calm expression never changed. Then, when the pack lunged all at once, he moved. He deactivated the barrier at the exact moment they leapt. The beasts expected resistance, but instead they fell forward, crashing into the den mouth, confusion breaking their formation. Daniel struck like lightning. His blade carved through the first, then the second. His movements precise and cold. He was not fighting with anger, but with the patience of a man who understood war. Every swing of his blade found its mark. Every strike turned screams into silence. Blood stained the roots of the tree. The cubs' wide eyes followed every motion, but the jungle was not. The jungle did not forget. By the third sunrise, word had already spread across the alien villages. One human had stood against the wild. One human had faced monsters and lived. Hunters muttered in disbelief. Elders shook their heads, and young warriors laughed nervously. It is only luck, they said. The jungle will kill him soon. But in the silence of night, even they looked toward the trees with unease. The predators were changing. The scouts returned with strange reports. Packs of beasts had stopped hunting near the cubs' den. Whole territories were quiet. No glowing eyes in the dark, no stalking shadows, no midnight howls. It was as if the jungle itself had pulled back. Predators that had never known fear now carried it in their eyes. The cubs, once restless and afraid, began to grow braver. Daniel did not only guard them, he trained them. He made them listen to the jungle, to the sound of wind, the rustle of leaves, the silence before danger. He showed them how to hide when needed and how to strike when escape was impossible. The aliens watching whispered in confusion. He treats them as soldiers, they said. Why teach cubs to fight? But the cubs learned quickly. Their small claws grew sharper, their eyes sharper still. They began to mimic his movements, crouching low, striking fast. They chirped with pride when they succeeded. Daniel only nodded, his calm face hiding something deeper. Still, not all aliens were impressed. Far away, in a rival village, a hunter heard the rumors and laughed. His name was Raykar, known across the clans for his strength. His body was massive, covered in jagged scars. His claws had slain beasts twice his size. When he heard that a human was praised for defeating predators, he spat on the ground. No weak off-worlder shames our kind, he growled. His tribe cheered him, eager for blood. The decision was made. Raykar would test the human. The news spread quickly. Aliens from many tribes gathered in the jungle to watch. They perched in trees, stood behind roots, hiding in the shadows. The den of the cubs became the stage. The air buzzed with tension. The cubs sensed it first. Their ears twitched. Their small bodies pressed close to Daniel. He looked up, scanning the jungle. He knew someone was coming. The ground shook as Rakar arrived. His claws scraped against the roots. His fangs gleamed in the moonlight. He was taller than Daniel by more than a head, heavier by twice the weight. His laughter was low and cruel. "So you are the human," Rakar hissed. "You kill a few beasts and they sing your name, but tonight they will sing your death." The aliens watching gasped. The cubs growled softly. Their guardian stood, his blade in hand, his face calm as ever. Daniel did not answer the insult. His silence burned hotter than words. The jungle grew quiet. The wind stopped. Even the predators seemed to hide, waiting. Rakar lunged. His claws struck like thunder. Daniel rolled aside, the ground splitting where he had stood. The cubs cried out, but Daniel was already moving. His blade flashed, cutting across Rakar's arm. Blood dripped. Rakar roared with rage, swinging again. His strength was terrifying. Every strike could shatter stone. Every roar shook the trees. But strength was not enough. Daniel moved differently. He did not fight like a beast. He fought like a soldier. His steps were measured, his attacks sharp and precise. He watched every twitch of Rakar's muscles, every breath, every shift in balance. The duel raged across the roots. Sparks flew as claw met blade. Blood splashed across the dirt. The cubs watched with wide eyes, their tiny claws scratching the ground in fear and excitement. At last, Daniel saw it. The opening. Rakar lunged too far, his weight unbalanced, his chest. Unguarded, Daniel struck. His blade pressed against Rakar's throat, stopping just before the cut. The jungle froze. Rakar's heavy breath filled the silence. His eyes burned with anger, then slowly dimmed with something else. He lowered his claws, bowing his head. The watching aliens gasped. Their champion, the hunter feared by all, was kneeling before the human. Daniel said nothing. He pulled back his blade and stepped away, his calm eyes scanning the crowd. The message was clear. He did not fight for pride. He fought to protect. The cubs chirped, rushing to his side, their small voices echoing in the silence. For the first time, the alien crowd did not laugh, did not whisper in doubt. They whispered in respect. But deep in the jungle, something else stirred. Tracks larger than any beast were found by scouts, footprints that sank deep into the soil, the marks of something ancient, something stronger than Rakar, something that even the jungle feared. Daniel studied those tracks later that night, his calm face hiding a truth he already knew. The real battle had not yet begun. The red moons rose high above the jungle, bathing the roots and trees in a glow that looked like blood. The cubs stirred uneasily in the den, their ears twitching, their eyes glowing faintly in the half-light. They felt the tension in the air, the way the forest seemed to hold its breath. Daniel sat outside the den, his blade across his knees, his expression calm but his senses sharp. He knew the rival hunter would return, not with words this time, but with claws. And then the silence broke. A roar thundered through the trees, shaking loose leaves and startling birds into flight. Heavy footsteps approached, steady and unhurried. The crowd of aliens who had gathered in the shadows whispered among themselves, their voices sharp with anticipation. Rakar, the great hunter, stepped into the clearing. His scars glistened under the red moons, his fangs bared in a cruel grin. His claws were tipped with bone knives, trophies from beasts he had killed. His eyes burned with pride and with hatred. "You should not still be alive, human," Rakar growled, his voice like stone grinding. "But tonight, I end your story." Daniel rose, his movements quiet. His blade reflected the red light. He said nothing, only nodded once, as if accepting what was to come. The aliens watching leaned forward. Some whispered prayers, others grinned. The duel was not just between two warriors, it was between two worlds. The cubs whimpered softly, pressing against one another, but Daniel glanced back once, and they fell silent, trusting him. Rakar struck first. He lunged with terrifying speed, his claws cutting through the air like lightning. The ground split where he struck, sparks flying from stone. Daniel barely dodged, rolling across the dirt, his blade flashing as it met claw. The sound echoed through the clearing, steel against bone. Again and again Rakar attacked, his strikes heavy, each blow meant to kill. Trees splintered, roots cracked, the ground shook under his fury. Daniel gave ground, moving light, his steps precise. His blade cut shallow lines across Rakar's arms and shoulders, never deep, but enough to slow him, to test him. The crowd grew restless. Some shouted for blood, others gasped as sparks lit the night. Rakar roared in anger, his pride stung by the human's patience. "Fight me, coward," he spat, lunging again. But Daniel did not answer. He studied, he waited. Every twitch of muscle, every mistake, he saw it. The duel turned into a storm, Daniel's speed against Rakar's strength. The clash of two worlds echoed into the jungle. The cub's eyes followed every strike, learning, memorizing. And then, Daniel moved differently. He baited Rakar, stepping closer, letting the claw graze his arm, blood staining his sleeve. The crowd gasped, thinking it was over. But in that moment, Rakar overextended, his chest open, his weight off balance. Daniel struck. His blade pressed against Rakar's throat, the edge gleaming in the moonlight. A single push would end the duel. The crowd froze. Silence spread like fire through the trees. Rakar's eyes widened, his breath heavy. His pride battled with reality. For a long moment he trembled, and then slowly he lowered his claws. He bowed, his massive head dropping. The crowd gasped louder than ever before. The great hunter, the undefeated champion, had bent his neck to a human. Daniel pulled back, stepping away, his blade lowered, his face calm as ever. He did not gloat, did not roar in triumph. That silence spoke louder than any victory cry. The cubs chirped from the den, rushing out to press against him, their tiny claws clutching at his clothes, their eyes filled with pride and awe. The crowd broke into whispers. "The human fights not for glory," one muttered. "He fights for them," said another. "Perhaps the jungle has chosen him." But far from the clearing, deeper in the jungle, the real danger stirred. Hunters returned with news of footprints, massive ones, larger than Rakar himself, pressed deep into the soil, the marks of something ancient, something not seen for generations, the monsters of legend, said to be the true rulers of the jungle. That night, as the aliens celebrated or cursed in equal measure, Daniel sat by the cubs, sharpening his blade. He looked out into the dark trees, his eyes steady. He knew this duel was not the end. It was only the beginning. The duel was over, but the jungle did not rest. By morning, whispers spread like fire. The human had beaten Rakar, the strongest hunter of the tribes. Some called it dishonor, others called it destiny, but none could deny the truth. Daniel Reeves was no ordinary guardian. The cubs clung to him with trust, their eyes sharp with new confidence. They moved differently now, standing taller, copying his steps. Wash. Ching the shadows with calm instead of fear. They had begun to change. The alien council gathered again, their voices low and uneasy. "This human, he bends the jungle," one elder muttered. "Predators flee, hunters bow, even the cubs grow fearless," another whispered. "Perhaps that is why he was chosen." Chosen. Yes, but not for reasons the tribes believed. Far from the den, in a chamber deep within the council hall, two elders spoke quietly. Their voices carried the weight of secrets. The records were true, the elder said, pulling an old tablet from the wall. On its surface were carvings of beasts larger than ships, and beside them, human figures holding blades of fire. "The ancients faced them once," the elder continued, "the jungle monsters that cannot be tamed. They grow smarter, faster, hungrier. They are returning. And only humans ever stood against them," the other whispered, fear in his eyes. Meanwhile, Daniel knelt by strange tracks in the soil. Each footprint was wider than his chest, pressed so deep the earth itself seemed crushed under its weight. The cubs sniffed the ground nervously, their fur standing on end. He touched the soil with his hand, feeling the tremor that still lingered. Something massive had passed here, and it would return. That night, the jungle grew restless. The usual cries and howls were gone, replaced by silence, a silence so heavy it pressed against the skin. The predators had vanished, fleeing deeper into the wild, as if they too feared what was coming. The cubs whimpered, pressing close to Daniel. He built a fire at the den entrance, his blade resting across his knees. He whispered only a few words to them. "Watch the shadows." From the tree line, glowing eyes appeared, dozens of them. Not the red of the smaller beasts, not the yellow of the hunters. These eyes glowed pale blue, cold and intelligent, the scouts hidden. In the trees gasped. "It is them," they whispered, "the ones from the old stories." The beasts did not charge. They stood in silence, watching, studying. Their massive shapes shifted in the dark, their growls low, like thunder rolling under the earth. Daniel's grip tightened on his blade, his face calm, but his body ready. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the glowing eyes vanished back into the jungle. The scouts whispered in terror, "They are not hunting. They are testing." The cubs trembled, pressing into Daniel's side, but he placed a steady hand on their backs. His calm presence kept them from breaking into panic. The next day, strange signs appeared. Trees bent and broken as if crushed by massive bodies. Bones of smaller predators scattered in the dirt, whole packs wiped out without a trace. The jungle was no longer a place of chaos. It was becoming the hunting ground of something greater. The council received word and panic spread among the tribes. "We must move the cubs," some demanded. "We must hide them." But the elders who knew the truth shook their heads. "No," one said. "If the beasts of legend return, no wall, no army will stop them. Only the human may stand." Daniel knew it too. He watched the cubs practice the lessons he gave them, saw the fire growing in their young eyes. He did not smile, but there was something in his silence, something like resolve. That night he set traps deeper into the jungle, pits covered with branches, sharp stakes hidden in the soil. His hands worked with calm skill. Every move was measured, every trap a sign that he was not only defending, he was preparing for war. When he returned, the cubs rushed to greet him, chirping and climbing onto his arms. One of them held a small stick, swinging it clumsily like a blade. The others laughed with chirps, but Daniel only watched in silence. In that moment, the scouts understood. The cubs were no longer only heirs to a tribe. They were being shaped into warriors. The aliens whispered in awe. "Perhaps the human does not only guard them," they said. "Perhaps he prepares them for something even greater." And deep in the jungle, the earth shook once more. A roar unlike any before thundered through the trees, long and low, carrying across the villages. The kind of roar that made even the strongest hunters freeze. The cubs' ears twitched, their eyes wide, but they looked up at Daniel, who sat with his blade ready, his voice low but steady. "It's coming," he said. The council's secret was about to break into the open. The night was heavy with silence. Not a single howl came from the jungle. Not a single bird called. Even the wind seemed to vanish, leaving the trees frozen. The cubs huddled together inside the den, their small bodies trembling. They felt it before the others, the weight of something ancient moving through the earth. The ground trembled. At first it was faint, like distant thunder, then stronger, shaking roots and cracking branches. The scouts hidden in the trees clutched their weapons with shaking hands. One whispered, "It cannot be real," but his voice broke in fear. Daniel rose from the fire. His blade gleamed faintly in the red glow of the moons. He stepped to the entrance of the den, calm as ever, but his eyes fixed on the shadows of the jungle. And then it came. The trees split apart as a beast unlike any seen in living memory emerged. Its body towered above the roots, covered in armor-like plates as black as stone. Its head was massive, lined with jagged horns. Its mouth opened to reveal rows of glowing fangs, dripping with venom that hissed when it struck the ground. Its eyes glowed cold blue, not the hunger of a predator, but the intelligence of something that knew it was feared. The cubs whimpered, pressing back into the den, their eyes wide. The alien scouts whispered in terror, "It is the Jungle Lord," one muttered. "The monster of the old stories." Another shook his head. "No one survives it." The beast roared, the sound deafening. Trees split and birds fell from the sky. The body of the monster lay broken in the clearing, its armored plates cracked, its glowing eyes dimmed forever. The jungle was silent, as if the ancient trees themselves bowed in respect. Not a howl, not a cry, not a whisper of wind, only silence. Daniel sat against the roots, his body weak, blood streaking his arm and chest, his breath slow but steady. The cubs huddled close to him, chirping softly, pressing their small bodies against his side. They were no longer afraid. The scouts who had witnessed it all finally stepped into the open. their faces pale, their voices trembling. They looked at the fallen beast, then at the human who had slain it. "No hunter has ever done this," one whispered. "Not in all our history." Word spread through the tribes faster than fire through dry leaves. By dawn, the villages echoed with gasps and cries. "The human killed the jungle lord," they said. "The cubs are safe, the predators flee, the balance has changed." But it was more than safety. Something deeper had shifted. The predators that once ruled the jungle no longer dared to come near the cubs' den. They smelled the blood of the monster and the scent of the human who had killed it. They learned fear. The cubs grew braver each day, their eyes sharp, their claws stronger. They copied the way Daniel moved, crouching low, striking with precision. They no longer whimpered at the sound of growls in the night. Instead, they stared into the shadows with calm. Daniel did not speak much, but he trained them as he had trained soldiers on Earth. His lessons were simple: watch, wait, strike only when needed. They learned faster than anyone expected. The tribes gathered to witness. They saw cubs that once cried in fear, now standing tall beside a human. They saw how they followed his every move, as if his courage had become their own. The elders called another council. This time the key, Weinstein. There was no laughter, no mocking. They bowed their heads as one elder spoke. "We chose a human to guard the cubs, but it was never by accident. We remembered the old stories. We remembered that when monsters rise, it is humans who do not run." The crowd fell silent, but the truth was larger than even the tribes. Travelers carried the story beyond the jungle, across the stars. They spoke in hushed tones in markets and starports. "A single human stood against the beasts of legend," they whispered. "He killed what no warrior dared to fight." And slowly, fear spread not only in the jungle, not only in the tribes, but across alien empires. If one human could tame the wild, what could all of humanity do? The cubs never forgot. Seasons passed, and they grew into leaders of their people. Their eyes still carried the same fire, their voices the same calm Daniel had given them. They led with courage, not fear, their decisions sharper than the claws of their enemies. In every village, their people remembered the story of how they survived. Children grew up listening to it by the fire. There was a time, the elders said, when a single human stood in the jungle, when even the monsters bowed to his courage. Daniel himself did not seek glory. He remained the quiet guardian, training, teaching, preparing. His body carried scars, but his spirit never broke. At night, when the moons rose red, the cubs would sit beside him, listening to his soft voice as he taught them not only how to fight, but how to endure, how to face fear without bowing, how to stand when others fall. The jungle never attacked again. The predators gave the den wide ground. The silence of the nights was not emptiness, it was respect. And so, a legend was born, not just of the cubs, not just of the tribe, but of humanity. For the galaxy would remember the whispers: "Do not test the humans, do not underestimate them, for where others see death, humans stand unbroken." And deep in the quiet jungle, Daniel sharpened his blade one last time, his eyes steady, his voice soft as he looked at the cubs he had raised into rulers. "Remember this," he said. "Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is standing when fear surrounds you." The cubs nodded, their young faces glowing with pride. The jungle bowed in silence. The tribes bowed in respect. And far beyond, the galaxy began to fear and admire humanity in equal measure. The story was no longer about survival. It was about legacy. The legacy of a human who guarded cubs and changed the stars forever.